He struggled to start out the season, but after a couple of nice performances, is it safe to say that Gicarri Harris is back?
You are Locked On Boilermakers, your daily podcast on the Purdue Boilermakers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Boilermakers here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Now, the number one sports podcast network, where it's your team every day. I am your host. I am Nick Arvin. I talk the Boilermakers every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Also write about Purdue for Purdue 24/7. And we've got an exciting one coming your way. Today, we're talking Gicarri Harris. He struggled to start out the season, but a couple nice games. Could he be back? Does he have that confidence? We'll get into all of that today. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com to place your NFL live bets all season long. So we're going to talk Gicarri Harris. We're going to get to Boilermaker buy/sell for the second week. And then I'm going to give an update about Joe Lunardi's bracketology, which released today. But let's jump into Gicarri Harris. He's the reason for this episode, and we need to talk about this guy. He deserves an episode because it's one of the most intriguing storylines of this team when we look at an individual player. Is the performance of Gicarri Harris, in my opinion. And going back to last year, we saw a similar thing with Harris where he kind of struggled to start out the season. Maybe the confidence wasn't there, but as the season started to progress, as we got into conference play and as we got into the year 2025, Gicarri Harris started to shoot the ball a lot better, seemed a lot more confident, and the stats started to show as last year started to continue. But going into this year, it was a little bit of a different scenario where Gicarri Harris, he looked extraordinary through a lot of those exhibitions, looked extraordinary through the summer, through the fall, looked super confident. And honestly, I was saying during those exhibition games that he deserved a starting spot. That's how good Gicarri Harris looked. And that's what he gives you. He's got that size where he can guard wings, but also has the ability to shoot the three ball, also has the ability to get to the rim. We saw it against Rutgers, was really explosive. So he provides you so much if you're a Purdue fan, and what he brings to that bench unit, if you want to have him come off as that sixth or seventh guy off the bench, but also if you need to play him with the starters, he gives you a lot of upside there. But the issue with Gicarri Harris is that although he shot it lights out in the exhibition games, although he looks, in my opinion, like Purdue's best player throughout a lot of the offseason, Gicarri Harris so far this year has really, really struggled. He's struggled shooting the ball at times, has struggled defensively, and he just hasn't been able to get those consistent minutes. Matt Painter has talked about it. Maybe that's why he's been struggling, because of those inconsistent minutes. It's hard to build a level of consistency when you do have that inconsistency and when you're playing who you're playing with. So that's something that Matt Painter has talked about in terms of why we may have seen Gicarri Harris struggle. And if we look at some of the game logs this season, I'll go through all of them for you. Had 3 points against Evansville, 1 for 6. Against Oakland, 0 points, 0 for 6. Against Alabama, 4 points, 1 for 3. 6 points against Akron, 2 for 3. Not a bad game. Going into Baja Mar, didn't really play much. Only took 1 shot against Memphis. Against Texas Tech, 17 minutes, shot the ball 4 times, made 1 shot for 2 points. So his highest scoring game going into last weekend against Eastern Illinois was 6 points against Akron. Just really has struggled shooting the basketball. And for me, in my opinion, it does come back to that confidence for Gicarri Harris. And I think that's part of the reason why we have seen him struggle to start out these seasons, back-to-back years, because maybe he isn't as confident starting out the season, but you can see it. And we've seen it these past 2 games against Eastern Illinois and against Rutgers. When Gicarri Harris is confident, when he's playing at the level we know that he's capable of playing at, he's hard to stop. And he's a guy that plays plus minutes for you and really changes games when he's on his A game for you. And we saw that against Eastern Illinois. We saw that against Rutgers. He played 25 minutes, 5 for 8 against Eastern Illinois, has 12 points in that game. And then he shoots the ball really well. The best he shot it from 3 against Rutgers the other night, 75%, 4 for 5 in 21 minutes, and he has 11 points. And the thing that I want to notice, yes, he's played 20 minutes one other time in the season to start the year out against Evansville. But outside of those games, these are the only two where he has played more than 20 minutes. And it kind of shows that the production follows Gicarri Harris when he is capable of playing those minutes. Yes, he has to earn those. Yes, he has to prove that he can get on the floor and play those plus minutes for you. But against Eastern Illinois, against Rutgers, he has done that, which gives me the assumption that Matt Painter is going to start to let that leash loose a little bit and give Gicarri Harris a little bit more playing time. Find him some more consistency within that lineup, whether he does continue to come off the bench or I don't see him starting over CJ Cox, but there is an opportunity where you throw him in a lineup with a Trey Kaufman-Renn, with a Braden Smith. He can produce with those guys. He can produce with Meyer and Jacobsen when he's on. When Gicarri Harris is on, he is a must-play player. We just haven't seen that at a lot of times this year. However, what I come to tell you guys today, what I am here to say, my take on things is that Gicarri Harris is back. I think that he is back, and I think that especially against Iowa State on Saturday, I think especially the rest of 2025 and going into conference play, we're going to see a new look Gicarri Harris. I expect us to see a guy that looks on fire. That intensity that we see from Gicarri Harris when he's on, it's not matched by a lot of guys in the nation. That's what he brings, is that level of intensity. We know who his dad is. We know how his dad played at Purdue, and I can see similarities. I'm not making that comparison, but from an intensity perspective, you can see those similarities with Gicarri Harris. I think it's a confidence thing. And I honestly think I saw it against Rutgers. I saw it against Eastern Illinois. This looks like a confident Gicarri Harris. This looks like a Gicarri Harris that has the ability to really make other teams pay. And we saw that at times last year. We saw that in meaningful games for Gicarri Harris. So I'm not saying that he is incapable of playing meaningful games, incapable of playing in meaningful minutes. Yes, he's averaging 4.8 points this year, only shooting 38% from field goal range. But that doesn't tell the whole story. Gicarri Harris, even last year, had similar stats up to this point because he did struggle shooting that three ball. I think that Gicarri Harris is due to bounce back. I think that the look that he gives you, especially off that bench unit, the ability to come in with a Meyer, the ability to come in with a Daniel Jacobsen, the ability to come in with a Jack Benner when healthy. Gicarri Harris gives you an ability when maybe those bench unit, it's not on fire. And right now, we don't have that issue because Daniel Jacobsen's made 19 field goals in a row. Benter looks good when he plays. Meyer, definitely a freshman, but we've seen flashes from him. We haven't needed Gicarri Harris quite yet to provide that spark because we have had that margin of error so far this year. But there are going to be games in this season, even against Iowa State. And I'm just going to say it, against Iowa State, it's an opportunity for Gicarri Harris to show up because you're not going to have that margin of error against an undefeated Cyclones team that you're going to have against a Rutgers or against an Eastern Illinois. But if he's able to keep that confidence, maybe you get yourself into a spot against Iowa State where you need a spark off the bench, where you need that guy. And I think that Gicarri Harris is that guy. I think that he's going to continue to be that guy for Purdue this year, whether he struggled or whether he hasn't, that he can come off the bench and provide that spark. And whether that happens against Iowa State, that's yet to be seen. But it wouldn't surprise me if Purdue, their offense is a little bit stagnant at some point in this game. The defense maybe gets beat at some points off the wing. And you put in Gicarri Harris, and he changes the game for you. I genuinely see that as a possibility against Iowa State. And it's going to be something that Gicarri Harris, he's going to need to play that role throughout the rest of the year because the luxury that you have when you could pull him off the bench with CJ Cox in your starting lineup, no other team in the nation has it. They just don't. No other team has Purdue's depth this year, and Purdue's depth looks a lot better when Gicarri Harris is playing at that A level he's capable of. So we haven't needed him to play up to that standard yet, but it's looking like he's getting more comfortable. It's looking like he's looking more confident. And when Gicarri Harris is on, Purdue is better for it. I expect Purdue to need him throughout the course of this season. I expect there to be games where Purdue is in a close one, and you need that firepower off the bench. When Gicarri Harris is better, Purdue is better for it. And I expect Purdue to continue developing, continue growing. And I don't even think that we've seen the best of this Purdue team yet. Playing great basketball right now, playing even better basketball when Gicarri Harris is on. If he continues to grow, if he continues to get better, and if he continues to shoot the ball more efficiently, this Purdue team is going to be one to watch out for. We'll have buy/sell Boilermaker edition. We've already did it last week. We're going to do it again this week. I ask questions. I'll say buy, sell, or hold, and we'll have that. That's here next on Locked On Boilermakers. The holidays are officially here, which means gift hunting season is on. And if you want something meaningful, personal, and guaranteed to get a reaction, Aura Frames is the gift that delivers every time. It's not just something you wrap, it's a way to share memories because Aura isn't your average picture frame. You can preload the frame with pictures before gifting it, so when they plug it in, the memories are already there. No apps to figure it out, no setup headaches, just instant smiles. I know that we've given you guys plenty of opportunities with our sponsors to give great gifts this Christmas season. I think that Aura Frames is just another great option. They do great things for you. A lot of customization options, and the packaging comes gift ready. No price tag, no wrapping needed. It's a huge win. And for a limited time, you can save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off. Aura's best-selling Carver matte frames, named #1 by a wire cutter by using promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That's AURA frames.com, promo code COLLEGE. This deal is exclusive to listeners, and frames sell out fast, so order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. If you guys have made it into the second segment today, I want to say that I really do appreciate it. And if you guys are seeing the channel for the first time, make sure to like, subscribe, comment. It helps us out a ton as we want to continue bringing this daily Boilermaker content to you guys. So I just wanted to say thank you. But for the second segment, something exciting that we did last week, going to make it a weekly segment, but it's going to be Boilermaker buy, sell, hold. And if you don't know how it works, buy means I believe in it. It's something that I believe I agree with. Sell, don't agree with it at all. And then hold, I need a little bit more time to form an opinion on it. We may need a little bit of time, maybe need weeks, months. It doesn't really matter. But so for an example, I'll just go ahead and say Gicarri Harris. That'll be the first one. Gicarri Harris is back. So I would say buy because my take is that Gicarri Harris, he's bounced back, more confident, has had a couple big games. So I'll have 4 questions that I'm going to give out. I'll say buy, sell, or hold, and then I'll give my answer and my reasoning behind them. So the first question that I have is Daniel Jacobsen the future of Purdue basketball? And we did an episode earlier in the week. So in case you missed it, my opinion on this is 100% buy. I buy. I think that Daniel Jacobsen has proven if he is capable of staying healthy, which I'm not doubting that. I just have concerns surrounding that particular body type, but not hoping anything on him. If he's able to continue to stay healthy, I think there's no doubt in my mind that Daniel Jacobsen is going to be the future of Purdue basketball. 7'4", the ability to score at an elite level. He can shoot threes, can shoot mid-range, get inside on the lob. Daniel Jacobsen can do a lot of things for Purdue basketball, and we're already seeing it. He's carrying a 19 field goal makes in a row streak into Saturday's game against Iowa State. That is a Purdue record in his redshirt freshman campaign. But just the opportunity for Daniel Jacobsen to have 3 years to develop. He's got this year, then his sophomore, junior, senior year going into the future with the guys leaving this year. I think that next year and going into the future, Daniel Jacobsen is going to have a huge role if Matt Painter can retain him, if he can continue to keep him in that black and gold going into next year. I think that the sky is the limit for Daniel Jacobsen, and I can't wait to see him develop for Purdue. I think that he's going to be the next great 7-footer for the Boilermakers, and I'm extremely high on Daniel Jacobsen. I can't wait to see what he does. So absolutely buying into the take that, hey, Daniel Jacobsen is the future of Purdue basketball. Second question, Iowa State is going to be the toughest matchup for Purdue the rest of 2025. And if we look at Purdue's schedule, the other matchups there that you can look at, you got Auburn and the Indy Classic. You got Marquette at home. You got this game against Iowa State on Saturday. You also got Kent State, and then there's another one, Minnesota at home. I honestly don't have any doubt in my mind. I'm buying this one. You could say hold just because we don't know how Iowa State is going to play Purdue at home. But in terms of the opponent, there's no doubt in my mind. I'm buying this one. Iowa State is easily the most complete team left on Purdue's schedule. And the reason they are complete. They have 1 through 5. We're all double-digit scores. We really haven't faced off against a team like this. And we'll get to it in the preview show. I hope you join us for that tomorrow on Locked On Boilermakers. But Joshua Jefferson, extraordinary, rebounds the ball at a good level for a forward, can shoot the ball really well, gets assists. So that's going to be a guy to look out for. But they have 3 or 4 guys, really, that can really produce for you that are going to be really good players. So we've seen in these high-quality matchups, these top 15 matchups that Purdue has played so far this year, that when Purdue has been able to limit other teams' number 1 guys, whether that be a JT Toppin against Texas Tech or a LeBaron Philon against Alabama, they've traditionally done really good at limiting those number 1 guys, and it forces those teams to be uncomfortable, not have the traditional offense that they're capable of having because you lock in on that number 1 guy. I don't know if Purdue is going to be able to do that against Iowa State because they have 4 number 1 guys. It's going to be an interesting strategy for Purdue in this one. And like I said, we're going to talk that game in depth tomorrow, but there's no doubt in my mind that this is going to be probably Purdue's toughest matchup going into 2026. Question number 3. Will the turnover margin hurt Purdue at some point this year? Now, I'm holding on this one. I don't have the confidence to buy in it. I do think that it could be an issue, but also it is enough of an issue that I'm not going to say still, because there is something to it where Purdue, the only category in terms of stats that maybe has struggled, I don't want to say struggle because they haven't turned the ball over at a crazy rate, just over 9 turnovers a game, which isn't bad, ranks around 20th in the country. So that's not necessarily the issue. But what is an issue is that Purdue, they're rated about 300 in the nation in steals. So when you combine that, the lack of turnovers that Purdue has been able to force at times this year, combined with the turnovers, Purdue hasn't really been capable of winning that turnover margin. And if we look back to Eastern Illinois, that game started out kind of closer than you would have liked because Purdue did turn the ball over quite a lot to start out that game. So I'm going to say hold because I do think that it may cause Purdue a problem. And I think that if we look at issues right now for Purdue, that turnover margin is probably number 1, where either you have to do one of 2 things, either take care of the ball better, which you haven't been doing a poor job at, or first force more turnovers. Your defensive rating isn't the best. I do think that Purdue's defense has done enough to win in past games, so I don't think that the defense is as big of a problem as people like to say towards Purdue, or that the metrics may back up. But I do think that stealing the ball is going to be something for Purdue that I would like for them to do more of. I would like them to force more turnovers, and I want at the end of this game on Saturday or even going forward for that margin to be a little bit greater in favor of Purdue because we just haven't seen that lately, and it's something that does need to change if the Boilermakers want to continue to win these games in the form that they have been able to win these games. Purdue, they just have so much firepower that you really have to beat Purdue. Like, Purdue's not going to beat themselves this year, where if you want to beat them, that turnover margin, it can't be even. It has to be really lopsided, and Purdue hasn't been in a game quite like that so far this year, but in my opinion, it is something to keep an eye on. If that turnover margin doesn't jump in the favor of Purdue, they may get into a game where the turnovers are going and they can't get anything going on the defensive side of the ball. That may create problems this year for Purdue. So I'm not buying on that one. I'm not selling on that one, but we'll have to keep an eye out on that turnover margin, whether that creates a problem going into the future for Purdue. And this last one, not really pertaining to Purdue, and I kind of hate that I'm doing this, but I have to do it. Is Indiana overrated? I'm buying it. Indiana is overrated. They lose tonight to Minnesota, and it's not relevant. It's not relevant to Purdue, but they're our rivals. I'm sure I'll give Jacob heck about it, but I want to talk about that one. Indiana, they play against Minnesota, and that just, it was a bad loss. That's all I can say about it. And Purdue, or Indiana, rather, I'm buying that they're overrated because, in my opinion, they shouldn't have been ranked in the first place. And this Minnesota loss reflects that. I don't want to get too into things because I do want to talk more about bracketology Purdue here in the next segment, but they lose 73-64 to Minnesota in this game. And Minnesota turned the ball over 17 times in this game. 16, actually. Indiana only turned the ball over 7 times. But Indiana, they struggled in this game. The bigs don't look great. And it makes me feel confident about that Purdue matchup going into the season. I think the teams that don't have quality bigs, and I'm not saying that Indiana doesn't because they have DeVries, they have other guys on that team, but if you don't have that big that's going to beat Purdue, Purdue's going to beat you. That's going to be how Purdue plays basketball. If you don't have that big that can compete with the front court of Purdue, you're not going to win. Indiana's front court did not look good in this game tonight. Somehow they turn over the ball 10 less times and lose to Minnesota. But I bring this up because we're playing Minnesota here in this next week. It'll be an interesting look at to what we can expect against a Gophers team that just beat the Hoosiers, beat the ranked Hoosiers. And I think it's the first ranked team to go down so far this year. But anyways, I'm buying Indiana is overrated. But thank you for joining us for the second edition of this buy, sell, hold Boilermakers. We're going to make this a weekly thing, probably a weekly segment. But I hope you stick around for this final segment of today's Locked On Boilermakers, where we go over bracketology. Joe Lunardi, he announced a new one. There have been some interesting things that were in it. I don't know if Purdue is the number 1 overall seed anymore, but stick with us. We're talking all of that here next. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in live time. And with FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. And although you can bet the NFL with FanDuel, you can also bet college basketball. And Purdue versus Iowa State is definitely going to be a fun one to bet on Saturday. So if you think you know the outcome of that game, definitely get to it with our partners at FanDuel. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL bets or college basketball bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. We've got another bracketology from Joe Lunardi. This one is interesting. So going back to last week when we looked at bracketology, the biggest update and something that I put a lot of emphasis on is Purdue. And that number 1 overall seed is going to be bigger than a lot of people expect because you don't really look at the regions. Some people do, but in general, I don't talk to a whole lot of people that look at the regions when talking about bracketology, where your team is going to play out. A lot of people just focus on the seeds, and that's fair. We want Purdue to be that number 1 seed, and the way that they're playing right now, there's not really a doubt in my mind that this Purdue team is going to be able to win enough games with 2 top 15 wins already to push towards that number 1 overall seed. Or not number 1 overall, but be a number 1 seed. However, going back to last week, Purdue was the number 1 overall seed. And the reason why that is more beneficial to you than it has been in past years is because it leaves you in that Midwest region if you are the number 1 overall seed. And that's in Chicago, which is definitely a regional advantage for Purdue if they would be able to play the Sweet 16 and potentially an Elite 8 in Chicago. You're going to be able to get a ton of Purdue fans in there because it is such a close distance to West Lafayette. And then looking forward to the Final Four and that championship game that's going to be played in Indianapolis. What an advantage that is for you if you're Purdue to get that number 1 overall seed, to play 2 games in Chicago and then to play in Indianapolis. That's what you want if you're Purdue. And last week, it looked like Joe Lunardi projected Purdue to be there. And before we get into this, I just want to start this out by saying this is very early, not a great read, a ton of basketball left to be played. But this week, Joe Lunardi, he moved Michigan up to the number 1 overall seed in his bracketology. He has Michigan being the number 1 seed in the Midwest region. And that's going to suck for Purdue. If that is the scenario, obviously you play with what you got if you're a number 1 seed, which is where Lunardi has them in the South region. I mean, you play with what you got, but Purdue would have a much better look, a much better chance of getting back to that Final Four, getting back to that national championship if they are that number 1 seed, if they are in that Midwest region. So it's going to give us something to look forward to if you're a Purdue fan this year. That is the ultimate goal, is to be the number 1 overall seed in that Midwest region. It's going to give you your best shot. If you're looking at that Midwest region, Michigan is the number one. Lunardi has Missouri and NC State being the 8 and 9. So that's likely the second round matchup for Michigan or Purdue, whoever is going to be there. North Carolina is the 5 seed. Vanderbilt is the 4 seed. That's an interesting matchup if you get there for a Sweet 16. And then Kentucky, Louisville. I don't know about Kentucky. This was before they lost that this came out. So they were at a 6 seed in Philadelphia before the loss to UNC. Where they're at now, that's a big question. We could get into Kentucky a whole other day, but that situation after beating Purdue in the exhibition and saying that this was going to be a championship year, it does not look like a championship year for the Wildcats. Louisville is at 3, Iowa at 7, Houston at 2. So you kind of get a read that, I mean, maybe you get a matchup with a Louisville if they're able to beat Houston in the Elite Eight. Maybe if Kentucky can turn their season around. But ultimately, the likely scenario, if you're in that Midwest region, is that you have a matchup between that 2 seed or between a high 3, a high 4. And right now, Lunardi has it as Houston, which that's a tough game. And honestly, as much as we talk about Midwest, and I'm kind of contradicting myself here, the South region actually looks a little bit easier in terms of not having to play through Houston. BYU is the 2 seed in the South region where Purdue is slated at. And whether BYU is an easier matchup than Houston, I don't know. I think that Houston is a better team. I think they're a more complete roster, in my personal opinion. But Purdue at the 1 seed, start out in St. Louis, play into Houston in that Sweet 16, Elite 8. And then Clemson is the 8-9 matchup with Oklahoma State. Auburn at the 5-12 will face off against them. And then Kansas, New Mexico State. That's one that I actually really like in terms of Purdue's outlook to making it past the Sweet 16. You either have to play Auburn or Kansas, High Point, New Mexico State, if some crazy upset happens there. But we'll get a good read at this Auburn team here in a couple weeks. Kansas, Darren Peterson, he's going to be a really good player. So maybe don't want to face off against the Jayhawks come March time. But right now, I think that Purdue is in a really good spot if they were to face off against either of those teams. Going down to the bottom of the bracket, BYU, Colgate is the 2-15. Ohio State, St. Mary's. We'll see a lot of Ohio State this year. And then Alabama, who Purdue already beat at the 3 seed, USC at the 6, and Texas/TCU at the 11. Yes, it's not ideal. You want to be in the Midwest region if you're a Purdue fan, but being the 2nd overall seed, as Lunardi has them projected right now, you got to be pretty happy with it. Auburn, who you'll have the chance to beat. Alabama, who you've already beaten. And there's a lot of good opportunities here. But, of course, this is early. This isn't going to give us a full read at where this bracket is. But it is interesting to see kind of where things are shaping off as we are getting towards the end of non-conference play, as conference play is starting to start up. And right now, Lunardi does have Michigan as that number 1 overall seed. But ultimately, that's the takeaway here is that Purdue, they're going to want that number 1 overall because they want to get into that Midwest region. You want to play essentially on a home court. That's what it's going to be. If you're playing in Chicago, if you're playing in Indianapolis, that's what Purdue is going to want. They're going to have the opportunity to play for that number 1 overall seed this year. I don't think that there's anyone in any other conference outside of the Big Ten that's going to get that. Right now, I do think it's honestly a 2-man race between Purdue and Michigan. Which one of those teams drops those games down into conference play? That's what I believe. I think it's Michigan. I think it's Purdue. Maybe a Duke or an Arizona slides in there, dependent on how conference play goes. But those are the 2 teams to look at. Look at the Midwest region. And the final thing that I do want to look at before we get out of here today is the overall conference, the amount of teams. Right now, the SEC is at 11, and the Big Ten is also at 11 teams, which is an insane amount of teams to get in for the Big Ten this year to match the SEC. I've seen some where the SEC is at 10. So honestly, the Big Ten has the opportunity to bring in more teams to the tournament this year than the SEC does. And I think that just kind of speaks to how top to bottom this conference is this year. And there's going to be a ton of opportunities for both Purdue and Michigan to rack up quad 1, quad 2 wins all conference long. And that's why I believe those 2 teams are the top 2 seeds right now, because there's going to be more opportunities for those quad 1 wins, for those quad 2 wins when you're playing in that tough conference that is the Big Ten this year. It's certainly going to be a fun year, certainly going to be a fun run through the rest of this non-con and going into conference play. And right now, Purdue, they're looking good. We'll have to see, but I appreciate you guys joining us once again today. Make sure you join us tomorrow for Iowa State, that Iowa State preview. It's going to be a fun one. Thank you for making Locked On Boilermakers your first listen today. For your second listen, consider checking out Craig Sheeman and Locked On Big Ten. He brings you everything from the most exciting conference in college sports, from the rivalries to the championship and every game in between. Find Locked On Big Ten on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. That's part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Of course, it is your team every day. Thank you, guys. And as always, boiler up, hammer down.